So it's very adaptable to the marketplace. Clearly, because you're in Los Cabos now.
Correct. Yeah. So there's of the terms because we're not replacing the actual contract. We're creating the meeting of minds,
Mhm.
right? So willing buyer meets willing seller. Seller says, "Hey, I'll take buyer B," and then the agents drop the contract. Like that part's not changing. In fact, anybody that listens to your podcast that thinks that Web3 and smart contracts and I don't believe that anytime soon that kind of ease of connecting is really going to happen.
Welcome to the Nick Fong Podcast. As the broker and owner of Ronival Real Estate, Nick has spent nearly 20 years in Baja California, sir. And in this podcast, he'll be talking everything Baja, from food and culture to real estate and property management. And now, here's your host, Nick Fong.
All right, welcome back to the podcast. Today's guest, remote, is Mike Russo with SparkOffer. Mike, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you, Nick?
Excellent. Whereabouts are you today?
Today I am near home in a town of New Bedford, Massachusetts. I live in Marion, Mass. New Bedford actually is a fishing port here in southeastern Massachusetts. Scallops are probably what we're best known for.
I brought you on the podcast because of a business that you started not too long ago called SparkOffer. And SparkOffer, for those that don't know, why don't you tell what you guys do?
Sure. So SparkOffer is an online offer platform for real estate, right? Simple, like that's what it's meant to be. It's meant for a buyer or a buyer's agent to be able to come to a property and actually qualify, right? Say, hey, I can pay for this property, and the listing agent qualifies them, and they can make an electronic offer on that property and give some transparency in relation to how their offer stands. Are they the only offer? Are there multiple offers? And how does my offer stand versus the other offers? And be able to change it in real time from their phone, just like what everyone expects from e-commerce today.
Right. And your experience prior to SparkOffer goes, I mean, you're not new to this auction type platform, are you?
No, I used to be one of the principal owners at Concierge Auctions. Did that from 2010 to 2017. I had the pleasure of selling luxury homes on average of about $5 million, but ranging from like $1 million to 45 million in 26 states and 17 countries.
How many countries?
17.
17 countries. So you guys were international. And that's how actually I met you indirectly because of
Yep.
your presence with Concierge Auctions here in Los Cabos. You've done several of those auctions here.
Yeah, they have.
Yeah. And so when you, I think it was well over a year ago, you and I met, you introduced this new platform to me. What scope do you guys have at SparkOffer? Sorry, I keep putting an S at the end.
Sorry.
SparkOffer in the States and internationally.
So right now, internationally, Mexico is probably the only place that people have used it, right? In conjunction with the property that you're selling. There's another development in Cabo that's been using it quite successfully. And then primarily in the United States, all over, California, Massachusetts, New York, everywhere.
So why use SparkOffer? If I'm a seller, for example, or a listing agent, why SparkOffer and not the traditional selling of listing and selling of real estate?
So it really isn't. It's sort of a misnomer, like traditional. It is still traditional,
Mm,
right? You're traditionally listing your home with an agent. You're traditionally marketing the property with that agent to get an audience,
right.
right? And instead of a buyer's agent, let's say, emailing you an offer on that, is that how you do it in Cabo?
Yeah. So it's an offer that gets emailed.
Yep.
Sometimes it's physically presented, but mostly
Right.
it's digital.
In some places, like in Greenwich, Connecticut, it's just an email. Like there's no contract, right? Just an email. So that's why I asked, right? It's so instead of that happening, right? A buyer or a buyer's agent. This is really one thing that's really important because we're very agent centric, but that there has to be a listing agent, right? But a buyer themselves can come and make their own offer on SparkOffer, right? And so, but a buyer or buyer's agent can come to SparkOffer, they can make an offer, and it's about creating some transparency and ease of access around buying a property, right? Today, that's a guarded wall,
Yep.
right? And I 1000% believe that our future over the next 5 to 10 years is drawing closer and closer to e-commerce and real estate. And I think SparkOffer is forging that future.
Excellent. And SparkOffer is present in how many states, cities, areas in the US?
I'm not sure you can, I mean, any listing agent that wants to use it can put a property. There's no restriction because it's
No
software.
restriction.
Yeah.
So it's very adaptable to the marketplace, clearly because you're in Los Cabos now.
Correct. Yeah. So there's of the terms because we're not replacing the actual contract. We're creating the meeting of minds,
Mhm.
right? So willing buyer meets willing seller. Seller says, "Hey, I'll take buyer B," and then the agents drop the contract. Like that part's not changing. In fact, anybody that listens to your podcast that thinks that Web3 and smart contracts and I don't believe that anytime soon that kind of ease of connecting is really going to happen.
I agree
Right.
with you. I mean, we're still trying to figure out how does that translate to the real world, the Web3 and the smart contracts. And it's with Bitcoin purchases, all of cryptocurrencies. But in regards to SparkOffer, what attracted me to the platform with our first property is we've seen in our market high buyer demand for resale units. And in communities where there's a high demand, we have been receiving multiple offers. And it's been very difficult for us and our listing agents and our sellers to really organize and systematically go through that process and not make a mistake. And when they choose the one buyer, there's all the other buyers that feel like I got screwed and there wasn't transparency. And
Correct.
that's what I was really attracted to with SparkOffer is that going through that process with 1, 2, 3 of our listings in recent months, it's SparkOffer offers a platform by which our reputation, our seller's reputation is maintained and there's no game playing going on.
Well, there's not only, yes, number one, there's no game playing because everyone can see where they stand on the leaderboard. But number two is, and I just gave a presentation on Gen Z, right? Like, and the presentation is everything they want is instant, right?
Yeah.
And the reality is, you know what? I don't care whether you're Gen Z, Gen X, baby boomer, right? Like everybody wants everything instant. And SparkOffer gives that to the buyer, right? Because the buyer could say, hey, listen, I'm fourth, right? Their agent isn't calling you, Nick, and saying, where do I stand? Where do I stand? What's my buyer have to do? They really want it. They can see their fourth and they can change their offer up, right?
Mhm.
They can change their terms. They can do what they want to improve their offer completely on their own. And the system will tell them that in a blink of an eye.
Hey, thanks for being a part of the Nick Fong Podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast to get the latest updates. And if you're watching this on our social channels, please like and share. And if you want to be featured or you want me to talk on a certain topic, food, activities, culture, real estate in the Baja, drop a comment.
Changing gears a little, but still talking about SparkOffer, you were mentioning before we started the podcast some trends in the U.S. Now, foreclosures have recommenced, and so that means banks are now selling foreclosures REOs, and
Yep.
that's a trend that you're seeing in the U.S. Not to levels that are catastrophic, but more the foreclosures REOs that we're accustomed to see in any market, right?
Yep.
And so, can you tell us about how SparkOffer is addressing that in the current marketplace?
Yep. So that is something that we're working on. We're bringing all the benefits that I just described to you to that market also, right? Because there's, in America last year, there were 250,000 flips. So, and a flip is defined as somebody bought a home, did something to it, and resold it in under 12 months. And there's a high demand because there's such a low inventory going on right now in the United States. There's also a high demand for buyers that are buying homes for investment to fix and flip, right? And that process is traditionally extremely slow. There's zero transparency. Actually, the idea that I came up from originally with SparkOffer after I left Concierge was because I was buying a fix and flip and I was miserable, right? And so the trend is like, yes, foreclosures and REOs are picking up. We are bringing to market, as many as we can get on SparkOffer. The average price that we're getting on SparkOffers is 95% of list price if there's no change in price. So we've established our own cadence, if you will, of if a property doesn't have offers within 10 days, that there'll be a price reduction.
Mhm.
So when you include that, we're getting 102% of list price once we hit the price that the market reacts to, right? And then the average property gets 7 offers.
And how does that compare to not using SparkOffer? Do you have that data?
It's on average 60 days faster, 60.
Wow. So you're selling for, typically it's the banks, right? That's the REOs. You're selling
Yep.
it 60 days faster. And that's very valuable to the banks because it's getting it off their balance sheet. And
It gets it off its balance sheet, and it's important to everyone. Like, our government is also very focused here on, first time home buyers and people, because we're short supposedly, 5 million housing units. These properties, one way or another, are going to be rehabbed for someone to live in, right? And whether it's an end use buyer or a fix and flipper that's going to be able to have a first time buyer buy it, right? I think it's a great thing for our economy. And if you can get those through the system faster, right, then like people can get a home to live in faster.
right. Mike, how do you see the U.S. real estate market now and for the next year?
So that's a really great question. I actually was recently speaking on the future of real estate at the National Association of Auctioneers in San Diego, and someone asked me the exact same question. And we have met the point that I expected 6 months ago, right? Which is we had this just massive appetite for buying homes, where you were hearing here, like people are getting 70, 80 offers on a home. And there were people writing stories saying, we're so short on units that this is going to continue for 10 years. Right. And I'm like, there's no way. Right. Because what'll happen is once interest rates rise, there's going to be a pause in the market, because sellers are going to still have now what will be considered a rational exuberance on the price of their home.
Yes.
Right. And actually, I even forecasted it with even out the price increase in mortgages, which is, I just said sellers are just going to get ahead of themselves on what their homes are worth, and eventually the buyers will push back, right? And that is what's happened, right? So there's still a lot of buyers in the market. They still want to buy a home. Sellers need to adjust to the new reality of what that home is worth today, which, in my personal depending on market, is probably 20% less than what they thought it was worth.
Got it.
Right. And part of that comes from the fact that the average US buyer literally had their cost of money, their interest rate, double. Right. The cost of buying for them is now double what it was 6 months ago or 4 months ago. Right. And so we're still going to have high demand. We're still going to have lots of homes sell, but we're going to have it take longer, and sellers have to go through a mental process of my home's not worth what I thought it was worth, or it's not what it was worth 6 months ago.
Right. And I'm seeing it right now in our market. And I know other people in the US markets are seeing it, where for the first time, we're starting to see some price reductions. We're starting to see properties stay on the market for a few weeks, in our market, months longer than it normally would. And sellers are having to adjust their pricing. In our market, when we meet with a seller, much like in the US, our sellers are thinking, okay, the comps show $1 million, but I want it $1.2 million, just because that's the way it's been going for the last 18 months. And that's the big shift in our market. And I know it's happening in your markets also.
Yeah. I mean, there you go. What'd you pick out? 20%.
Exactly. No, it's been crazy. And we're having those meetings and appointments with owners because maybe they're just not paying attention for the last 90 days, but it's been that shift in the market. And we have in Los Cabos also the seasonal effect. Our summer months tend to be slower. And so that doubly makes things more challenging for a seller. But this fall, I anticipate definitely properties continually being on the market a little bit longer. But our market is always been extremely in high demand, and we're always going to have buyers. And I know that's going to be true in most US real estate markets also.
I know I got to come to Cabo. I just keep hearing how great it is.
Mike, you just can't do business here. You have to come. So
I don't want to. I just want to come visit.
So we'll get the first property underway, which is already underway, and we're closing the auction at the end of this month. We're recording in August, and I look forward to doing a lot more business with SparkOffer. And I appreciate your time joining us on the podcast.
Thank you. I'm glad you asked me.
All right, Mike, take care. And for the rest of you, until the next one, bye for now.
Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Nick Fong Podcast. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and the YouTube channel at youtube.com/Ronival Real Estate, and follow Nick on Instagram at NickFong_Ronival. Ready to find your Baja dream home? Check out the latest property listings at Ronival.com or FindMexicoHouses.com. Hasta luego.